All right, next question. And I like this one. Very simple. Mike from Rochester. What are the best and worst case scenarios for the Florida Gators this season?
Okay, well, should we start with worst or should we start with best? Because I like to finish on a positive note.
Then worst.
Let's start with worst, and then we'll finish with best. All right, the worst case scenario is that DJ Lagway, who had off-season shoulder injury, who has been limited throughout spring, is on a pitch count currently. The worst case scenario is that he's not at 100%. The worst case scenario is that he's not available every single week throughout the season. If those things don't happen, that's a huge problem. All right. I don't think this team can overcome an injury at quarterback like they were able to overcome last year. Graham Mertz got hurt. DJ Lagway went right in, and they finished with a bang. They had great momentum going into the offseason as a result of the play that DJ Lagway provided. That's number one. Number two, the brutal schedule eventually takes its toll. Last year, it didn't. They got stronger as the season went along and started to win some of those games down the stretch that you thought they might be out of gas in. That's something that I think is massive. But this year, they have one of the hardest schedules in college football. All right, not only do you have to play an SEC schedule that includes 8 games against quality teams like Georgia, you're playing LSU, you play against Tennessee, you play against Texas, you have a brutal schedule. And by season's end, it might start to take its toll. And if the roster isn't prepared for the grind that this season and the schedule could provide, that could be a huge problem. I think the other thing is look, losing close is one thing, getting blown out is another. Think about last year, the game against Tennessee didn't feel nearly as damaging as the game against Miami in week one. The game in week one got sideways. Miami blew them out. The game against Tennessee, you were kind of left with some optimism. Went on the road, competed against one of the best teams in the country. And yeah, you lose a close game, but you felt like the pieces were starting to come together. So I think getting blown out is another thing that would potentially be the worst case scenario. So I think also, too, you get off to a poor start. You're looking at your schedule, you're 3-3, you're 2-4, whatever it may be, depending on how it all shakes out. Then you could kind of create some dissatisfaction amongst the fans. They all of a sudden start to boo. Like, that's the worst case scenario. But I don't think that's likely. Like, the best case scenario is far more likely for the Florida Gators this year. So let's kind of highlight what the best case scenario would be. Number one, you carry over tremendous momentum from last year. That momentum carries over. They were 8-5 last year, including winning 4 straight to close out the season. You had some massive wins, like against Ole Miss. That win kept the Ole Miss Rebels out of the playoff, and they kind of finished with a bang. So they just continue to pick up right where they left off at season's end. That's number one. Number two, DJ Lagway blossoms, recovers completely from his offseason injury, doesn't skip a beat from where he was down the stretch, and becomes an even more capable player with his arm, with his legs, with just elevating everyone else around him. Because if you watch, he provided a spark last year in so many ways. Now, while the numbers aren't going to necessarily jump off the page, you just watch it how the other guys played when he was on the field. There was a sense of belief. If he can develop into a Heisman Trophy caliber quarterback, then the sky's the limit for what Florida could potentially become this year. If he breaks out, has a Heisman Trophy type season, becomes one of the top quarterbacks in the SEC, that could be massive. Number three, the offensive line becomes a dominant unit. I mean, just dominant across the board. A lot of veterans back along the offensive line, a lot of continuity that's been created. You have a dynamic 1-2 punch, 3 punch at running back. Jaden Bobb becomes one of the best backs in the SEC. He's extremely powerful, one-cut runner, can run through contact pretty easily. If he can do that and the offensive line gels, they'll be massive. And then the defense, man, Ron Roberts goes in, defensive coordinator. Yes, there's a few new faces that might be along the defensive line, but you have some carryover from last year, like Caleb Banks, a defensive tackle, that could become an All-American this year if he can play for 12 games the way he played in the final 3 or 4. If he can do that, you're in great shape. And if the defense can improve from a takeaway standpoint, that would be big as well. They also, I think, need to win some big games, right? They're going to have a few games where they might be an underdog. You go on the road to LSU, might be an underdog there early in the season. You host Texas, might be an underdog there against a team that everyone thinks is one of the best in college football. You get a neutral site game against Georgia, might be an underdog in that game. You win some of those upsets, and then you can parlay some of those victories complement those with a win against Miami, a win against Florida State at the end of the season, and you might be in a really good spot. So I think those are kind of the best case scenarios for Florida this year. And I'm telling you, man, I think they're going to be a problem. I think Florida's going to be really, really solid. They're kind of flying under the radar. The schedule's brutal, but I do think they have the personnel to weather the storm. So they're still very much in the mix when we get to the end of the season.